Well, as always, it's a special time to be here. As Gary mentioned, this church has been part of our lives personally since the early 90s and when you began supporting us. And it's just, we're grateful. We really are. But one of the things you might not know, because there are some people here that are new to the church, some of you old-timers will remember this, but most of you probably have no idea how much this church has had an impact on the work in Mexico where we live. We're down the Baja Peninsula. I'll show you that in just a second. But about, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years, a long time ago, this church sent a team down to La Paz, a work team. But before the work team got there, Pastor Brown was there, and we had been given a piece of land to turn into a ranch, a beautiful ranch for ministry purposes. And when the ranch was given to us, we had no idea what to do with it. I mean, it's here, this land is yours. Okay, thank you. We had no money. We had no staff. We didn't know what we were supposed to do with it, but we just felt we should say yes to this offer. So we did. And shortly after we said yes to and accepted the land, Pastor Brown went down, and he stood in the corner of it was like a big cattle trough pool. And he stood in the corner of this pool. He raised his hands, and he started to turn a circle. And he said, I see marriages being restored. I see drug addicts being healed. I see people being saved. And he goes, Steve, what was that? And I said, I think the Lord just spoke to you. But to me, that was the confirmation that we had done the right thing in accepting that ranch. Because up to that point, we were, what are we going to do with this? Anyways, Pastor Brown from this church was the first person to confirm through the work of the Lord that we had done the right thing. A little bit later, you guys sent a work team down. Some of you were there on that work team. And we put a fence around the ranch, or part of the ranch, first project. Then this church helped put the roof on the first house, building on the ranch. And so you were with us at the very beginning, and that ministry is now a phenomenal ministry. The day before yesterday, they had 190 kids there at this ranch. And it's used almost every weekend. It's a phenomenal ministry that's bringing churches together, kind of like you guys are doing here as you meet with other churches. That's happening in Mexico because you guys sent a team to get started. Now, what you might not remember is there was a young woman on the team. She might be here today. I have no idea. I think her name was Becky. And we were clearing the land where we were going to put an addition on the house. It was really, really hot. And Becky started to feel a little bit sick. So she bent over and she vomited. And then she panicked. She goes, I puked on a snake. I puked on a snake. And she had been straddling a rattlesnake. And she threw up right on the snake. And anyway, that was also from this church. So so you gave us our first missionary snake story from the ranch. And then another thing that this church did, and this probably most of you don't know this, but this church made available a very generous grant to what is now our second church in La Paz. And with a group of you were at that place, we prayed over the land before we bought it. We hadn't bought it yet. We prayed, is this the place? And I think the Lord said, yes, this is a place, because there's now a church there. Our second church is going very well. And it was made possible because of a grant from this church. So Manoa has had a major, major influence in our ministry in Mexico. And for that, we're extremely grateful. We really are. And I'd like to invite you to come back to help us. About 10 years ago, maybe, there was a team that's going to go down there, but the drug war violence was so bad that we had to cancel the trip. I don't know if some of you might remember that. The drug war is still bad, but we know a little bit more how to maneuver around it. So please feel free to come. Now, in the worship song, the slides, the first song we sang, God of Glory, remember those whales that were in the water? Well, if you come to visit us in February, March, or April, we'll take you out not only to see the whales, we'll let you pet them, where you can pet a whale the size of a school bus that comes up to your boat. Anyway, I'll do more advertising later. But where do we live and work? Okay, we're in La Paz. It's a city of about 300,000 people. Now, to get to La Paz, okay, first you drive to California. Okay, got it? California, Los Angeles. Go down to San Diego and keep going. You cross the border in San Diego here. And you drive, and you drive, and you drive, and drive. And then we get here, you're halfway to where we live. So just coming. So we're way down here in La Paz. Now, the interesting thing about this is GPS is not needed on there because there's only one road. So if you're to use Waze and start, okay, Waze, we got to go to Los Angeles. They'll say, turn left, drive for 2 days. And that's about it. Anyway, that's where we live and work. And it's just it's a wonderful city. And we are honored to be part of the work there. Okay, one of the things you have to understand about me is that I have become the world's laziest theologian. Okay? If there's not a lot of pictures in the book, I'm probably not going to read the book. And so I like bullet points. I like just nice and simple. And if I can understand the concept, I'm not going to read the whole book. Maybe I should. Like I said, I'm the world's laziest theologian. And right now, there are 2 passages in the Bible that really, really mean a lot to me. The first one is the one that we read, Colossians 1. That to me, was a life-changing passage quite a few years ago because of the environmental aspect. I'm an environmentalist, and you'll see something of that in a few minutes in the video. But the verse right now that is changing my life and giving me direction to my life is only 9 words long. Well, the first half of the verse is 9 words long, and only one of the words is more than 2 syllables. And the verse is changing my life, and which has become the axle to my life's ministry and to what I believe is, it is not good for man to be alone. And that little verse, Genesis 2:18, is what has given direction as we serve the church there in La Paz. And people say, well, how can that one little verse have such an impact on what you do? Well, how did God reveal himself to humanity? The Trinity, 3 in 1 community. Then God says it's not good for men to be alone. So what did God do? He created Eve, brought Eve to Adam. And it was only after the 2 of them had been created that God says that he created them in his image. So for the image of God to exist requires community. And so often in this country, we're losing community. We're becoming a nation of individuals, isolated individuals. And God said, that's not good. That's not good. He wants us to live in community. And so for me, it is not good for men to be alone. It describes God, 3 in 1. It describes the relationship between man and wife. Then you go through the Bible and you look at why did Jesus come to earth? Well, he came to earth to reconcile all things to himself. So the reason Jesus came to earth was to create eternal community. Why is Jesus coming back? It's so that we can be with him forever. Why did Jesus create the church? Many members, one body. So everywhere you look, you see that it is not good for man to be alone. And God's passion, I think, to create unity, to create a body. And in Mexico, that's what we're trying to do. Now, the picture there of that was our church's first baptism and creating community. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a minute. But also back to the Bible and this whole thing about unity. Okay, think of the 10 Commandments. Okay, got the 10 Commandments in mind? Do any of them have to do with our relationship with other people? Yeah, they do. Don't rob. Don't commit murder. Don't commit adultery. They're how we react to other people. Think of the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience. Has to do with other people. Think of the requirement of pastor and elder in the Bible. Got that in your mind? Okay. That has to do with our visible relationship to other people. And so everything that we're doing right now in my ministry revolves around that little verse. It is not good for man to be alone. And so what we're trying to do is create a community where people can belong, where they can join us, part of what we call the church. So right now, we're going to look at a video, and this video is about our civil association. Lois and I started a Mexican nonprofit organization, kind of like a 501c3 here, but a Mexican version of that. And the purpose of it, our goal is use adventures at sea to transform lives. And one of the reasons that we created the association, this nonprofit, is because someday we'll be gone. We'll retire, we'll pass away, something's going to happen. And I don't want to be remembered as a missionary. Oh, that's not bad. I don't want to be remembered as a pastor, although that's not bad either. I would like to be remembered as that guy that started this environmental protection agency that was always talking about Jesus and always helping people. Because that's something that everybody can do. Very few people can be pastors. Even fewer can be missionaries. But everybody in the place of work can have a vibrant Christian testimony. And so we've created Reconciliar, as a way for us to get into the community and for people to see that Christians can have a very active part in all kinds of activities. So now let's look at the video. It's only 4 minutes long, and this video explains our ministry of Reconciliamar, which is plain the words in Spanish, reconciliation, love, and ocean.
I was with a group of scuba divers on Isla Espiritu Santo, a World Heritage Island in the Sea of Cortez off the coast of Mexico, and we're having lunch between dives. As we were talking, the discussion turned towards some of the environmental crises that we're starting to observe, even here in the furthest reaches of the Sea of Cortez. We're seeing destruction of mangrove forests. We're seeing damage from boat anchors as they swing through the coral reef. We're seeing the results of overfishing, loss of species. And we're also seeing lots of plastics that are being introduced into the food chain. The conversation turned towards some of the problems, such as lack of education, lack of good laws. And at this point, I had to jump in and say, look, the laws are good, the education is good. There's not a kid in the school system here that doesn't know that it's wrong to throw trash into the water. The problem is we're missing the third component, and the third component is the spiritual element. I went on to explain that legal protection and education are good, but together, they only form 2/3 of the equation required to protect our environment. The missing third is the spiritual component, the part that allows lives to change, to be transformed. And this is where Reconciliamar comes in. We add the spiritual component, the part that compels people to do the right thing, to put the needs of others first, to understand that the first command God gave humanity in the Bible is to take care of the earth. In Reconciliamar, we help people understand what it means to have the freedom to start over and to think in new ways, or as Jesus put it, to be born again. We help people care for God's creation out of love instead of them risking becoming fear-based environmentalists. The successful equation for caring for our wonderful and only home is education plus legal protection plus transformed lives. That equals a healthy, sustainable earth. In Reconciliamar, we take the people of our state of Baja California Sur, Mexico, out to sea in sea touring kayaks or on scuba diving outings. Our goal is to use adventures at sea to transform lives. As we go to sea, we are privileged to spend hour after hour after hour building honest friendships via shared life experiences. As relationships grow, conversations deepen, and as conversations deepen, the truths of the Bible are openly discussed. We believe the best way to introduce people to Jesus is by sharing life together in honest and growing relationships. As people begin to understand biblical truths and apply them, their lives are transformed. And as their lives are transformed, they're able to overcome selfishness and greed, the two primary causes of environmental degradation. We would really appreciate it if you join us in the work of Reconciliamar. If you are ever in La Paz, we'd love to have you come by for a visit. Take a kayaking trip with us. Go diving with us. We'd love to have you. Get to know us. Share life with us. Volunteer and work with us. If you'd like to support us financially, you can do so through our U.S. offices or our office in Mexico. Tax-deductible receipts are available in either country. Come join us and help us as we use adventures at sea to transform lives.
Okay, that's just a short video of Reconciliamar, what we do. And what this does, as the video pointed out, it gives us hour after hour after hour to talk to people, to become their friends. It's also getting us into schools. It's getting to government offices. It's helping us gain access to levels of society that normally Christians don't have access to. Most of our friends, or many of our friends, are scientists, biologists, medical professionals, and that society normally doesn't get too interested in the church. But as they spend time with us, sharing Christ becomes just a natural outflow of what we do. It's not forced, it's natural. And it's been just a tremendous asset to the ministry because it creates time with people and it gives people a common point of interest with us. One day I was out kayaking with a friend who's a surgeon, and he's also part of several environmental groups, very well-known environmentalist in Baja. And he came paddling up next to me, and he goes, Steve, you're the pastor of a church. You want me in your church. This is how you're going to get me there. And he told me how to evangelize them. And the first thing he said is, you Christians are dull and boring, and you don't do the things that we like to do. As we're kayaking, I couldn't figure that one out. But anyway, he's now part of the group. So that's how this kayaking works. Time with people, doing something enjoyable, and then naturally having the chance to invite them to our second ministry, which is called Psalm 1. Psalm 1 is a house church movement. Well, we hope it becomes a movement. Right now there's two. And it's called Psalm 1 because the first Bible study we ever did was on Psalm 1. And one of the guys in the group wanted to create a WhatsApp group and didn't know what to call it, so he called it Psalm 1. So the name stuck. So our third church is going to be called Psalm 1. An Orthodox name perhaps, but fine, it works. And so we call each other Salmitos, little psalms. And so we're the little psalms when we get together. And Psalm 1 is a beautiful group of people that most of us met kayaking, most of them met at sea. But the purpose of Psalm 1 is to create that sense of community where people say, I belong, this is who I am. And this all goes back to the verse that we read at the beginning, the reconciliation of all things, from Colossians 1. And I'm an environmentalist. I want to take care of the environment as part of my ministry. And so I did a study on the reconciliation of all things. And what does that really mean? Well, first of all, reconciliation means going back to the way it used to be. So when there's two people fighting, they reconcile, they go back to the way the relationship used to be when it was good. So, the reconciliation of all things. Someday, everything broken will become the way it used to be. Whether it's the environment, whether it's human relationships. And so I look forward to that day when the reconciliation of all things, and the word all, if you look it up in the original languages, all means all. So everything broken will be fixed. So what got broken? Go back to the Garden of Eden. Remember when they sinned? The first thing that got broken was the relationship to each other. They were separated. That needs to be brought back together. What happened when God went to visit them in the garden? They hid from God. That relationship got broken. It will be fixed someday. What happened to work? Instead of nice, gentle caring for the garden, work became hard, drudgery, kind of the way it is today. But someday will once again be an enjoyable thing. What happened to where they lived? They got kicked out of this beautiful garden into a place full of weeds and who knows what. Someday that will be fixed. And their bodies began to die physically. Someday our bodies will be fixed. And so as we work towards the reconciliation of all things, we can envision this world made perfect, this world without pollution, this world without war, this world without, and it'll be just a perfect, wonderful place. And this is the message that we can share with our friends who aren't believers yet. As I mentioned, many of our friends are scientists, they're biologists, they work in that world of science, and they're all pretty upset about the condition of the world. You know, whether it's any environmental issue, deforestation, overfishing, plastics in the ocean, they're discouraged at all the bad things that they see. And I say, look, in our faith, in the Bible, we read that all things will be fixed. All things will be reconciled to God by the blood of Christ. And that gives us hope. And that's the hope that we can share with people. Instead of being negativists and afraid of the collapse of everything, we say, things might be bad right now, but when enough fix a lot of broken things. Now, Jesus has to come back to fix everything. We can't get rid of sin. That's his job. But we can do a lot more than we're doing. And I'm thrilled. I come in here and I see this nature scene. And the first song we sang, God of Glory, these are songs of hope. These are signs of hope. And so you're going to be teaching the next generation of kids that there is hope. Even though the press, even though everybody's negative these days about just about everything, there is great hope because the Bible teaches the reconciliation of all things. Another story I want to tell you about Salmo Uno, the Bible study group that we have, is also Luis, my surgeon friend. And as the Bible study group grew, we meet in homes. Each group, we go house to house. There's 4 or 5 homes that are sharing now. And we have a sit-down meal, and we have a Bible study. Although we don't call it Bible study, we call it Bible exploration. And the reason you call it Bible exploration is because if you call it Bible study, I'm the leader, you follow me, and we'll finish the study, then go on to the next thing. But when you're exploring, what does it imply? When you're exploring, you're traveling together. We're saying, let's see where the Bible will take us. And when you explore, you never finish because you get to one mountain peak and there's another one ahead of you. Or you're paddling the kayak and there's a bay here, but there's nothing over there. There's always the next place to go. And so we want people to view the Bible as an exploration, someplace that you can't ever quite get there. And we're exploring together, we're on a journey. So anyway, that's how this works, the Bible exploration time. But anyway, Luis, we were kayaking, and I said, Luis, I've got a problem. Salmo Uno, our house church, is getting too big for a house. We really don't fit. When you have 20 to sometimes 25 people in a small house in the Mexican economy, it's a little bit uncomfortable. What should I do? And he said, well, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what not to do. And he said, don't rent a place. I said, why not? Because if you rent a place, it's going to change who you are. Because you have to have a bank account, and you have to have officers, and you have to have all these things, and it's going to change who you are. He said, instead of renting a place, why don't you start a second group and do it on Saturdays so I can go? Because he was always in surgery on the nights that the other group met. And so that's how this house church movement is taking off. It's it's participating with the people, it's talking with them, and it's sharing leadership from day one with the Mexican people. We're trying to avoid where Lois and I are the founders, the leaders, the force in this house church movement. We want it to be our movement. And so right now, we're here, and down there in La Paz, Victor and Cesar, Monica, they've taken over. They're leading the house church while we're away. And it's a natural thing. And so that's what we're doing in La Paz. We've got Reconciliar, the nonprofit that you saw the video of, and then we've got the Salmo Uno House Church movement. We're in the process of leaving the second church that we helped start. They don't need us. We no longer have any assignment at the church. And so the Mexican Christians are 100% in charge of the church. They don't need us. So now we're going to move on to our next and third church plant process, and it will probably be a house church. Anyway, thank you very much for allowing us to be here this morning. Thank you for 25, 30 years of supporting us on the mission field. And I want to repeat, send a team down. We've got a lot of things that you can help us with. Also, if you do have a chance, you want to go whale watching or watching whale sharks or whatever, we can take you out where you can swim with a fish that's from here to that wall with a body probably about that high, and you can swim with them and you can touch it if you want. Anyway, come visit us, and we'll show you God's creation, but we'll also show you what he's doing in the Salmo Uno House Church movement, which is what we're all about. It's about the church. Thank you.